Islam threatens U.S. Constitution. This is Aben al-Hurriya, Son of Freedom. In this essay, I will show that Islam functions as a hostile political power and poses an existential threat to the U.S. Constitution. Therefore, additional steps must be taken to safeguard the Constitution from being overthrown by Islamic political as well as kinetic warfare. My argument is in 10 propositions. Islam, number one, Islam is not a mere religion. It is a total worldview, including a religion and a corpus of law. In addition to its 5 pillars, which are mostly religious in character, Islam requires the installation of Sharia law wherever it goes. From Reliance of the Traveler, a classic manual of Islamic sacred law, Section 8, 1.4, quote, the good of the acts of those morally responsible is what the lawgiver, that is, Allah or His Messenger, has indicated is good by permitting it or asking it be done. And the bad is what the lawgiver has indicated is bad by asking it not be done. The good is not what reason considers good, or the bad what reason considers bad. Unquote. This means that the concept of development of a secular jurisprudence is illegitimate in Islamic doctrine. Reliance of the Traveler is a convenient manual where Islamic law is summarized and organized. It carries the imprimatur of authenticating Islamic bodies. Sharia law consists of the drawing together of legal statements from Islamic canonical literature, combined with the binding scholarly consensus as stated in Reliance of the Traveler, Section B, 5.1. Reliance of the Traveler, Section A, 7.22, outlaws the doing of philosophy. This would also involve outlawing the doing of secular political theory or secular jurisprudence. 2. Islam is a supremacist and imperialistic doctrine. Its objective is to rule the world through the legal corpus of Sharia law. I'll let you read the references off the screen. In Islamic doctrine, the world is made up of 2 spheres, the Dar al-Islam, that is the house of Islam, and the Dar al-Harb, the house of war. The non-Muslim world is viewed as an object of conquest. Islam teaches that the kafir, infidel, peoples, are the other. Islam teaches to hate the kafir and to not befriend the kafir. Islam teaches its adherents that they are members of the Ummah, the worldwide nation or community of Islam. Islam teaches that the Muslim's only political loyalty is to the Ummah, not to his country or domicile. Islamic teaching, taken as a whole, makes Muslims highly resistant against assimilation into the country or domicile, the country of domicile. This is because Islam teaches that any non-Islamic society is vile in the eyes of Allah. S.A. Siddiqui, in his Methodology of Dawah, 1989, a major contemporary policy and strategy document, says, quote, call unto Allah means surrender to Allah, who is the creator, the lawgiver, and the sustainer. It means to accept His authority in its totality in every walk of life. It advocates that sovereignty belongs to Allah alone and denies all authorities besides Him. Allah alone has the right to ask loyalty and obedience from a Muslim. Only Allah-given laws are to be accepted, practiced, and implemented in an individual's life and established in the society where the Muslims live. Unquote. 3. Islam views all non-Islamic governments as illegitimate. Islam, as a doctrine by its very nature, cannot peacefully coexist with secular governments. Sayyid Qutb, in his book Milestones, 1964, is another major statement of contemporary Islamic political doctrine. In Chapter 6, Qutb argues that Sharia law is a part of Allah's universal law. Quote, man cannot understand all the laws of the universe, nor can he comprehend the unity of this system, He cannot even understand the laws which govern his own person, from which he cannot deviate by a hair's breadth. Thus, he is incapable of making laws for a system of life which can be in complete harmony with the universe. This capacity belongs solely to the creator of the universe and of men, who not only controls the universe, but also human affairs, and who implements a uniform law according to his will. This obedience to the Sharia, the path of God, is necessary for the sake of this harmony, even more necessary than the establishment of the Islamic belief, as no individual or group of individuals can be truly Muslim until they wholly submit to God alone in the manner taught by the messenger of God. Unquote. And from chapter 4, quote, the establishing of the dominion of God on earth, the abolishing of the dominion of man, and taking away of the sovereignty from the usurper to revert it to God, and the bringing about of the enforcement of the divine law, Sharia, and the abolition of man-made laws cannot be achieved only through preaching. Those who have usurped the authority of God and are oppressing God's creatures are not going to give up their power merely through preaching. End quote. 4. Islamic doctrine directs its adherents to use jihad, warfare, to overthrow any government within which it exists. 5. Violent jihad includes intimidation, terrorism, and up to open warfare. Civilization jihad includes propaganda, subversion, and political warfare. Muslims are commanded in Islamic sacred literature to invite people and peoples to become Muslim. If they do not, and they are not people of the book, that is Christians, Jews, and Zoroastrians, they are to be killed. If they are people of the book and they refuse to convert, then they are invited to become dhimmis, that is subjugated, and pay jizya, that is tribute. If they refuse that, they are also killed. Civilization jihad consists of many strategies to weaken, subvert, and finally overthrow the constitution, laws, institutions, and culture of the target territory. To learn more about civilization jihad, I urge you to read Bat Yor's book, Y-E-O-R, Bat Yor, in her book, Eurabia, the Euro-Arab Axis, Robert Spencer, in his book, Stealth Jihad, and from the Center for Security Policy, their book, Sharia, the Threat to America. 6. Islam expresses its imperialism historically and at present. During Muhammad's career, he demanded all peoples and tribes of the Arabian Peninsula to accept his particular monotheism and to accept him only as the living prophet of that deity who he called Allah. In order to bring this about, he directed about 95 military expeditions. He was a warlord. Muhammad also dispatched letters of invitation or demand calling for submission, that is Islam, to his monotheism and to his prophetic office from at least 7 heads of state, according to Al-Tabari, History of the Prophets and Kings. Although he died before he could bring about the conquest of those kingdoms, Islam exploded out of the Arabian Peninsula. At its maximum expansion, the Islamic Empire ruled North and East Africa, the Iberian Peninsula, Southern Europe, Central Asia, India, and Indonesia. According to some accounts, Islam is responsible for the murder of some 270 million people throughout its history. Islam also carried out the subjugation of whole peoples, destruction of civilizations, enslavement of populations, pillage of property, robbery of possessions and treasure. See Paul Fregosi, Jihad in the West, Bat Yor, Decline of Eastern Christianity under Islam, and Andrew Bostom, The Legacy of Jihad. Europe is currently in crisis. It is suffering from violent jihad in the form of ongoing acts of terrorism, no-go zones, a rape epidemic, and wanton violence on indigenous Europeans. It is suffering from civilization jihad in the form of OIC, that is Organization of Islamic Cooperation, sponsored initiatives which levy concessions through the European Union on the states and peoples of Europe, being overrun by migrants with a higher birth rate, implementation of Sharia law courts in the UK, establishment of Islamic centers of propaganda in the universities, and a gradual stealing away of the autonomy of the European states and bringing them indirectly under the control of the OIC through the EU. In a word, the transformation of Europe into Eurabia. 7. It is the goal, doctrinally and operationally, of Islam to eventually overthrow the U.S. Constitution and replace it with Sharia law. A Muslim Brotherhood strategy document was found in a search of the sub-basement of a home of a couple who were observed photographing the columns of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge. It was entered into evidence in the Holy Land Foundation trial in the U.S. District Court for North Texas in 2008. It was titled An Explanatory Memorandum on the General Strategic Goal for the Group in North America, dated 5/22/1991. In it is found, quote, the process of settlement is a civilization jihadist process with all the word means. The Ikhwan, that is the Muslim Brotherhood, must understand that their work in America is a kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands and by the hands of the believers, so that it is eliminated and God's religion is made victorious over all other religions, end quote. This document also named 29 Islamic organizations in the U.S. as organizations or friends of the Muslim Brotherhood. These, along with CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, also found in the trial to be a front for Hamas, are Muslim Brotherhood front groups operating in the U.S. That Sharia law is integral to Islam, and that it would replace the U.S. Constitution and U.S. Code, makes Islam, as an ideology or doctrine, a threat to the U.S. Constitution as seen from Article 6 of the Constitution. Quote, this Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, shall be the supreme law of the land. Unquote. 8. Government officials in the U.S. are sworn to protect and defend the Constitution. 9. The laws as they exist, or as currently enforced, are not adequate to interdict civilization jihad. The OIC has successfully pressured the UN to pass UN Resolution 1618, which EU member states are now adopting, making it a crime to critique or analyze Islam in a way that it would offend Islamic actors, under the title Defamation of Religion. So in effect, Europeans now have their hands legally tied from rolling back Islamic political warfare in public forums. The OIC and Muslim Brotherhood front groups are actively at work to smear any criticism of Islam as Islamophobic hate speech. If this move is successful in enough public venues, it becomes a parallel path to effectively abrogate the First Amendment. I believe the eroding and eventual abrogation of the First Amendment is a high priority target for Muslim Brotherhood and the OIC, and would be a first step in overthrowing the U.S. Constitution en toto. 10. Therefore, it is recommended that lawmakers and policymakers take additional steps to put in place the necessary laws and rulings to prevent Islamic actors from positioning themselves through civilization jihad to overthrow the U.S. Constitution. This is Aben al-Hurriya, son of freedom. Thank you for listening.